What is up, everybody? Welcome to the Ham Radio Crash Course. Welcome to Saturday. Thanks so much for making it out. Hopefully, everybody out there, if you got HF, it is the QSO party today. The U.S. QSO party, or North American QSO party. So if you want to get some easy HF contacts, go check that out. Thanks again for joining us out here on the Ham Radio Crash Course. Got a fun show, hopefully, for you today. Kind of targeted to those who are maybe worried about their communications capability in an off-grid type sense and are looking to bolster that a bit. Enjoy the memes as we kick things off, and again, thanks for coming out. And what is up, everybody? I am Josh, KI6NAZ. You're watching the Ham Radio Crash Course. I can take these off because I don't need to hear the song anymore to cue. Thanks again for coming out. Appreciate you watching. Today's a special kind of episode. Largely, this is a byproduct of the sheer volume of questions that I've been getting. Tons and tons of questions. And we'll talk about that when we get to some slides. I'm hopefully going to show you a lot of overhead shots of the radios that we're going to be talking about, and hopefully walk through some stuff on why you may be interested in them or why you should consider them. So yeah, thanks again for coming out. There's 382 people watching right now. That's crazy. Thank you to everybody for making it out. I really appreciate it. Looking around the chat, so many people, so many names. Andy, I see him. Hey, I see Chuck. How's it going, Chuck? My wife is in the chat. Say hello to Leia there. And yeah, links are in the description if you'd like to hear Leia and I rant back and forth. This weekend's podcast was particularly good, so check out the Ham Radio Crash Course podcast wherever you pod. I believe we are everywhere now, so pretty much everywhere. All right. VA3MZD Rod. How's it going, Rod? Thanks for coming out. Man, so many people. Right on. Memphis. We got Memphis James. What's up? Now it says 460. Wow, so many people watching. Thanks so much. I appreciate it. I really do. Yeah, and so everybody talking about the podcast. Appreciate you listening to the podcast, too. Right on. Today's secret word is GMRS, says Nature's Child. Well, we'll see how that goes. We'll definitely be talking about GMRS, at least in a little bit. Shadaroo with the super chat. Howdy, Josh. Hope it's a good stream. Thank you. I hope so, too. Really, if it's not, it's my own fault, not your own. But thank you for the super chat.
I know for a fact them radio waves is harmful.
Right on. All right, very good. Okay, so we just want to mention a couple of things right up front here. As always, hamtactical.com if you want merch like my shirts. All this stuff is produced by my wife. We have drinkware and sweaters and all kinds of fun stuff. Would you like an appliance operator mug? Would you? The appliance operator, my favorite logo that we've made, looks really good on a desk. Think about that. Right on. What else? Let's see. Yes. I got a lot of questions on, like, where did the Ham Radio Crash Course go in reference to, like, some of the first videos I made on ham radio. Pretty much the entire channel turned into the Ham Radio Crash Course. And if you are new, the best place I would go is the first playlist right there. Are you new to ham radio? Ham Radio Basics. And that whole playlist should help out, hopefully, with a lot of your questions. Can't be all of them. That'd be insane because ham radio is a really big hobby with a lot of diverse information, and I'm definitely not an expert in all of it. Maybe not even any of it. You tell me. Anyway, so a lot of comments on that. I don't kind of get why, but there you go. Go check out the playlist. Okay, so the news item for today, there's been a couple of videos on it, but Hamvention was canceled. I'm not surprised. It's already saying Hamvention 2022, so sorry about that. That's a bummer. I know I was looking forward to seeing a lot of you out at Hamvention, but these things happen. We can expect the unexpected with the human malware virus around. You know, it just kind of is what it is, and I'm bummed out. So sorry I'm going to miss seeing you all. I know there's going to be a lot more people once we get all clear of this that are going to go to Hamvention when we meet up, and we're going to have meetups and all that stuff. I won't tease you with what could have been, but it could have been fun. Right on. Kevin Harvey says, "Hey Josh, like the beard from one beard to another." Well, thank you very much. I appreciate that. Right on. All right, so we're talking about, and we got to be specific here, and I've got some slides that are going to walk through this. It's people who are kind of coming at this new, or maybe have only focused in one aspect of radio and are looking to round it out a little bit, and maybe looking to do this quickly. So if you're watching this and that's you, well, thank you for watching. I appreciate that. Hopefully I answer your questions. If not, links are in the description for how to find me, like our Discord and our Facebook group. I have an Instagram. You can troll me all over those places, send me DMs, all that stuff. Getting a lay of the land. That's right, Noah. Noah knows what's up. So that's from the podcast, by the way. We will be doing a Discord after show, so if you are interested in asking your question live to a group of like-minded individuals who are interested in communication and how all that stuff goes on, take the link in the description to our Discord. Discord's kind of like an IRC chat. It's both text and voice, and we have a lot of fun doing the after chat, the after show, so join us over there. Christiana, thank you very much for the super chat. She's asking Leia if she's gotten her ham license yet. Christiana, you should go check out the podcast. Your answer will be provided, I think, in short order. Right on. Now I forgot what I was going to say. Now I remember. I have to open my beverage. And today's beverage, oh, look at that. It's a twisted tea. It's a twisted tea that's keyed out, apparently. This is an original twisted tea. Just a regular original. We don't have much more fancy twisted teas other than original and peach. Couldn't get them mangoes. The exotic mango twisted tea. Oh, that's good. I tried this for the first time on the podcast. And so if you want to hear Leia and I's opinion of it, go check out the podcast. Felix says more prepper-oriented digital stuff like radio libraries. Interesting. Yes, we will be talking about that. Not in today's show, but in the future for sure.
I know for a fact them radio waves is harmful.
It's really refreshing. Actually today was like over 80 in California, or where I'm at. And it's still like 80 degrees here in the shack, so I'll take it. We've got mosquitoes, too, that are, like, popping out, which is insane. David Davenport, hello from 96SC. Right on. Thank you for that. All right, what are we talking about? It's an emergency, and I need ham radio now. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. Literally. I have been getting dozens and dozens of comments on, like, just tell me what I want. Tell me what I should get. I don't even want to know. Just tell me, what I need to do. And that's not really my style, because it's more complicated than that, right? And we're gonna walk through it. I'm gonna be doing a little hot shoe back and forth here between the overhead and the wide angle, but we'll go ahead and get started. All right, crazy times. How crazy times require sometimes emboldened, passionate people that become really interesting in radio. But with that said, today's topic is not about any specific political event. It's merely just a byproduct of what I'm being told is happening and the messages I'm seeing, the reaction, the interest in radio. So radio sales are through the roof right now. I am being told that in some cases sales are beyond that of what was in Black Friday or sales done during Black Friday. An insane amount of sales. So insane that, like, you can't get a Baofeng on Amazon until the end of February/March. Just a simple UV5R. Can't get it. Just can't get it. So many people are looking for an off-grid communication solution. Something that's not connected to a network, the internet, the phone, Facebook, Twitter, that whole stuff. So first, welcome to radio, and I'm using the welcome to radio, not just ham radio. I know in the ham radio crash course, but I use many other radio services, and I enjoy them all. So thank you. Right? Hopefully, I can help you out a little bit. And thanks for finding the communities here. If you have not already, check us out on Facebook and Discord. Kind of already mentioned that, but reminder doesn't hurt, and the links are in the description. This is a extremely vast hobby with many different paths, not just ham radio, but pretty much all the things we're going to go into. Some are a little shallower than others, but it all takes you time to kind of sit down and digest it, right? The information I'm throwing out is not just going out to the store, buying something, and putting it on a shelf. In fact, that would be the worst recommendation I could give you to do. So whatever we're talking about here maybe requires you to dive in a little bit more for some more information, and I hope you consider that. Third, it is going to require some patience. You should, as a newcomer, particularly if you're like brand new to radio, there might be a little learning curve, but there's a lot of videos out there from creators that, not just me, but lots of people that are patient, helpful, not just YouTubers, people on Facebook, clubs, right? Reach out to a local ham radio club if you can find one, and hopefully you get some help. So what is going on with the surge in sales? Basically, there are many people that are worried about the control that a few select companies have in your ability to communicate over the internet. Kind of as I hinted at. So regardless of your political beliefs, even though it's happening right now with one particular segment, you should consider the power that very few companies are wielding in removing content that they don't approve of, and it's under the guise of community standards. So keep that in mind, that if you objectively look at it, it's a bad precedent no matter who you are. Jeff T, wow, thank you for the super chat, $50. Appreciate that, man. That's awesome. And Digital Analog Ham, hey man, I hope you're doing all right. You had a fall. Digital Analog Ham is a UK YouTube content creator, and I think he had a fall there, and I think he broke his collarbone or a part of his shoulder. I hope you are trying to rest up, and thank you for the super chat. Best wishes to you.
I know for a fact them radio waves is
and
harmful.
Because of human beings and the perceived threat to basic things like communication's a basic thing, right? There's this kind of perceived threat that there's going to be a disruption, and because of that, people have decided, I need to acquire things really quickly to assuage that feeling of being left out or being in a situation where they won't be able to get the help they need if for some reason that were to happen. And I think that the statistical likelihood of something happening that you'd have to depend super grid down on any of this stuff is relatively unlikely. But hey, guess what? It's a lot of fun. It's an amazing hobby, regardless of its immediate emergency need. So keep that in mind. And I had referenced I don't know when, but I referenced toilet paper in 2020 is basically what it sounds like ham radio has become in 2021. So I guess we stepped the game up a little bit. Toilet paper is not too complicated, right? Now, with all that said, I got to get this out of the way first, because I know there's a lot of people that are just going out there and buying a ton of radios. I get it, but I got to do the obligatory, please consider getting licensed. And Nature's Child in the chat asked, do I need a license to talk when there is an emergency? I'll leave this slide up because this is apropos to that. In an emergency, and an emergency in the terms of amateur radio, or really any radio, is classified as an immediate threat of great bodily harm or death, or an extreme loss of property or some kind of monetary value. And then, in those cases, yes, you can pull out a radio, any radio, and transmit on it to try and help your situation. Okay? So there's the clarification. But, if you, again, bought a radio, put it on the shelf, and haven't used it, I'm willing to bet that you wouldn't be able to call for help if you needed it. So it's a catch-22. You should have radios, regardless of what it is, how deep down the rabbit hole you want to go. But if you've not used it, it's going to be difficult for you to get what you need from it, if that makes sense. Why do we even have licenses, right? The airwaves are all free, right, basically. I mean, the frequency space that we can use with our radios is all around us, right? There's no switch for those of you that listen to the podcast. So the point is that is true. However, the radio spectrum is finite, meaning the frequency space, right, that we can operate radios on you can't make it bigger or smaller. It is a byproduct of DC to daylight, that whole thing that we've talked about in other videos. There are only so many places you can transmit a radio on. And we have to appreciate that in our lives today, we are surrounded by devices and services and first responders, right? Emergency, traffic, hobbyists, and commercial entities that all want a little piece of this pie that is this finite frequency space. So the way we manage that is we have a licensing system. And that's licensing across the board for businesses, for first responders, for hobbyists, for companies that want to sell radios that are frequency locked. We all kind of use the licensing system to prevent everybody from getting stepped on. And I use this example here. If we just had the Wild West where you could just transmit wherever you wanted, and you were just talking to your buddy, and all of a sudden you just got bombarded with digital data. And mind you, digital data from like all directions, cell towers, radio towers, TV towers, and they just happen to be on your frequency. Or maybe they jump around because why not? You wouldn't be able to do much about it. It'd be extremely difficult because it's digital. It's encoded. You're not going to be able to decode it, figure out who the owner was, and go talk to them. Very hard to do that. So that's why we have licensing, in a nutshell. Shadowrow with the super chat. I bought a BF F8 right before the panic, working on my license right now, and bought the Gordon West book. Right on. I saw something from Christiana. Oh, hey, Christiana. And it was to my wife, but thank you, Christiana. She said, my 2 girls and my son-in-law have theirs. I've been one for 40 years. My oldest KB1WER, my son-in-law N1AMD, and my youngest is KC1ECN. Right on. Thank you, Christiana, for that. And Grandpa E.G. Murphy. Well, thank you, buddy, for the super chat. Don't want to sound cheap. Just sending my 22 at probably one of my favorite calibers for sure, actually, just because 22 is fun. It's great to teach kids with, too. All right. So why should you get your license then? And I promise this is the last slide where I'm going to be talking about this. Actually, one more. And it just breaks down the licenses. With a valid call sign, you're allowed to basically free to experiment with amateur radio, or experience it, learn its uses and functions. It basically gives you a license to learn more, to explore deeper, to ask questions, and hopefully find answers. If you don't have a license, it becomes really difficult to determine how effective your station is because you're really not going to be able to communicate with people, right, if you're just going to use it in an emergency. So it makes it a little bit difficult. And it's also a fraternity of people, like-minded people that have technical knowledge that do want to share it, at least most of them. All hobbies have some bad actors, and this is no exception. So, appreciate that. The reason radio can be hard, though, without being licensed is that the people who have the information are hams. They're licensed people. If you show up and you're using it illegally, they're probably not going to talk to you.
I know for a fact them radio waves
Some
is harmful.
may actually report you, although I don't know how much information they'll get from you. That's kind of neither here nor there. But I think the point is that the information is going to be hard for you to retrieve without getting your license. I would like to plug my video that I put out about the FCC fees going up. So if you are considering getting your license, now is the time to do it before the FCC fees go into effect. So consider that. All right, we can move on. All right, amateur radio licenses, just real quick, a breakdown on that, because, again, getting tons of this question, too. Which license within the amateur radio license should I go with first? Well, the simple thing is it's in linear order, and you can't step out of that order. You got to get your technician first, and then your general, and then your extra. And you don't have to get your general or extra, but I recommend going up to at least general. Technician is what gives you access to VHF, UHF, which is handy talkie radios that are line of sight, meaning about as far as you can see to the horizon is the technical maximum distance. A little bit further, maximum distance for that radio, okay? And then general opens up access to high frequency, and that allows you beyond line of sight communication, where you can bounce your signals off of the ionosphere. Both of those tests require both those license requires passing a 35-question test. And if you want to step up to extra, which gives you access to all the frequency spaces, which all those little bars in that slide, all the frequency spaces, that's what you get for being an extra. That takes 50 questions. All the tests you have to pass with a 75% or higher success rate, on right answers. And if you want to get licensed, if you're thinking about it, and maybe you're not all the way convinced, go to hamstudy.org, try a practice test, and see how you do. You might be surprised. I think a lot of people think that it might be difficult to get their technician license. It's really not. And you might be surprised on how far you can get with what you already know. All right, I'm done with that. Thank you for bearing with me. All right, so hypothetically, let's say we're in some looming emergency. We generally don't have the foresight to know this type of emergency, but we're just thinking about it, right? But let's assume in this example, we've got widespread power outages, widespread loss of internet, and spotty cell phone coverage at best. The following slides, I will cover what I would buy, just me, my personal opinion, if I was preparing for an imminent emergency and it was happening soon. Soon is relative. I will leave it at that. Where do I buy this stuff, or where could you buy this stuff? I have an Amazon store. It's basically an affiliate store that just has curated items. I appreciate if you don't want to use Amazon. I understand. I'm not, hey, no offense. I have nothing to do with this. It's just an easy way for me to list what I recommend for people. You can go to hamradio.com, which is the ham radio outlet. And recently I've been all over buytwowayradios.com. They have an easy-to-navigate site for services for radios that are not just the amateur radio service. Makes it really easy to find what you're looking for. So I would check them out. So here we go. Off-the-shelf solutions, no license required. We're starting at the top, and we're going to work our way down. And I will mention right up front, I have tried where possible to note where things are coming from China, when things are coming from China. But I don't know if the manufacturing or components of said devices are 100% from China or not. There are U.S. companies that claim they are U.S. companies, or maybe they're managed in U.S., that resell Chinese products, or they have American-made products that have a large amount of Chinese components in them. There are a lot of people who are concerned about that in today's environment. I get that too. I cannot tell you what level of Chinese manufacture is in some of these radios. So I just note if the company is from China or not. All right, so the first thing we're going to talk about is a wideband receiver. Repeat that with me because it's really, the name is really important. Wideband radio receiver. We are going to try to get as much of that RF space in a radio so that we can slide around and get as much information in as possible. There are three major companies, and again, I'm putting the emergency hat on, so I'm focusing on what I would get if I was preparing for an emergency. Cato is a U.S. company, and they make emergency radios. C-Crane is a U.S. company, very high-quality receivers. That's what we call them when they just receive signals in. They're receivers. They don't transmit, so they're not transmitters, and they don't do both, so they're not transceivers. Chris C., something witty goes here for the super chat. Thank you very much. Norm Sue B., thanks for all the videos. I appreciate the super chats for everybody. Appreciate it. And then Texan is a Chinese company. However, they are moderately priced, and they are good quality receivers. So if you don't mind the China thing, I would look at Texan because they are generally cheaper. I am experienced in all three of those brands, and I like them all. In fact, the Texan PL660, which is on loan to my my stepdad right now, is one of my favorite shortwave radios, and the C-Crane, which we'll talk about in a second. So yeah, wideband receive will allow local and nation to worldwide comms. So you'd be able to put up a long wire in the backyard or something like that, and you'd be able to listen to tons of all kinds of frequencies, whether it's way down in the shortwave spaces or high up in VHF, UHF, airband, weather, all that good stuff. So let me show you what I got there. Okay, good. I just got to make sure I've done this right. All right, here we go. So these are three radios. The top left yellow radio is a Cato Voyager. The bottom diagonal silver radio is a Voyager Pro. Those are both emergency radios. They have a hand crank. They have a solar panel. They are kind of a self-sustained emergency radio, particularly if you're in an off-grid situation. It makes them useful, again, if you're off-grid, but they also have capabilities that will kind of interoperate with your cell phone. It has a hand crank. Again, it has solar panel. Very much the emergency class of the house. Emergency side of things, if that's what you're interested in. One of the good things about the Kato radios is that they do shortwave, which is what you would call the low band of the radio spectrum, or the lower end of the radio spectrum. They'll do FM and AM broadcast. I believe both of them do airband and NOAA weather alerts, and they have a NOAA weather alert feature. Upper right-hand corner is a Texan. That is just a simple AM/FM shortwave radio. All three of the radios I just talked about only will do amplitude modulation and frequency modulation for listening to signals. The lower left two, the gray candy bar looking one, and then the one next to it that's kind of vertical is the C crane. Those will do AM/FM and also single sideband. And single sideband is what you would expect to hear if you were on amateur radio, for instance. So keep that in mind. Now, let me slide over here really quick just so I can give you kind of a walk around on some of these. Oh, you know what? You can't see this one either, but there's another one right there. That is the TIV Dio. This is a Chinese one. I threw it in there just for completeness. This is probably the cheesiest radio out of the bunch, and it's the worst performer. The Kato Voyager is $50 on Amazon. The Voyager Pro, I believe, goes up to $100. To be honest, I don't see a reason why you need to go to this one over this. This is a fine radio. The best one out of the whole entire group here is definitely the C crane C crane Skywave single sideband. It does pretty much everything that all of them do, but it is a better performing radio, just right off the bat. Way better than the other ones combined as far as receiving. This guy's good too. This is available on CountyCom. It's the GP5 single sideband. It's a nice radio, but it has a very difficult control mechanism.
I know for a fact them radio
On this
waves
one,
are
you just type
harmful.
in the numbers for frequencies you want to go to, and that's all it takes. Stephen Brannon, what shortwave stations do you tune into? To be honest, I don't have like a schedule of, I got to be here for such and such a station. I just turn the radio on and I like to just hop around and be surprised. That's kind of what I like to do most. All right. So I learned something right now. That doesn't work that way. Let's see if that does. Okay, real quickly on SDR receivers so that we can just say I covered them. SDR receivers are software-defined radios. They are kind of like what I just showed you, except that instead of having the circuitry inside the actual box that allows these signals to be demodulated so that you can listen to them, it gets pushed off to the computer to do that. So they connect to your computer via USB. You have an antenna attached to them, and there's usually some kind of software you run that allows you to listen to the stations that are coming in. And the example of that is this SDR Play RSP1. That's all there is to this unit. It's just this little box. It has a USB-A, or this is a USB-B port that goes to your computer, and some threaded connectors for an SMA antenna. This connects to your computer. You run software to see the signals, and you actually do see the waterfall, which is really, really nice. So keep in mind, too, that you obviously need a computer to run these. And the notable brands in this space are SDR Play, which is definitely the top performer. That is basically the SDR Play is the same thing as the C crane, but just done on the computer. The advantage to this is that you see the frequency space, you see the waterfall. You can do different things with the modes of operation. You have memory within your computer, so you can have lots of memories programmed. You can do recording of the signals. You can actually port the signals out of this and into another application if you wanted to do decoding of digital radio, etc. So, very good. Okay, the new Elect and the RTL SDR dongles are very similar. They're both made in China. At least I believe so. That one I wasn't completely positive on the new Elect. I believe it is, though. And they're really cheap, and they generally focus on the higher side of frequencies. So consider more of like your amateur radio VHF, UHF side of the house, your FM broadcasts, your 900 megahertz first responder frequencies and whatnot. Okay, scanners. This is something I'm not the best in, so I will just mention this right up front. I don't know that I have to explain a lot on scanners, but it is definitely a deep rabbit hole, and I've done a couple of videos on it. I believe I've linked them to the beginners area playlist, so check those out if you have not already seen them. But they do a lot today. They handle analog receiving. They do digital decoding, so that is voice that they convert into a digital signal and transmit. And then the other side, or the scanner, will decode it back into voice, and they handle trunking. There's a lot of things that they do. There are two major companies I recommend, Uniden, which is a Japanese company, and Whistler. At this current date, I own a Uniden SDS 200. It is underneath my my bench here, or it's right next to my main operating radio, and I listen to it all the time. There is not enough time in this show to go do a deep dive on scanners, but if you are interested in that, they obviously have a high value for emergency purposes, so you might want to check into that. Again, I have the SDS 200. All right, so FRS radios. So here's kind of our first stop in transmitting radios. All right, so that FRS stands for Family Radio Service. They are short comms, two-way handheld radios sold in big box stores and online. And the intention is for FRS radios is to stay connected with others in busy places. They don't have a big range, though, so keep in mind, because by law, the radios themselves are FCC regulated to be low power. They're designed to work in close proximities, designed to work within small groups, small spaces, all right, because it's a channelized radio system. In fact, I'll go ahead and turn one on here so that I have an example. That's not the one I want to turn on. We'll turn on this one. The major companies are Midland in the U.S. Motorola makes a ton of FRS, GMRS, and business radios that we'll talk about in a bit. Redivis is a Chinese company that generally does a pretty good job with FRS radios. So I've been appreciating what they've made, and I own a couple of them, and they're pretty good. Wushan is another Chinese company that I generally like their amateur radios. I don't own any of their FRS radios, but I have used one of them when I believe HRO had one that I was playing with. And then Cobra is a Japanese company that is under the Uniden Holdings ownership. So Uniden, going back to scanners for a second, there is a Uniden Holdings company, and that holding company has a lot of brands underneath it. Keep in mind with FRS is that they're mainly really only good up to 1 to 5 miles at most. So you need to keep that in mind. Here are a couple of FRS radios. This is a Redivis, and this is a Redivis. These are all FCC part-accepted radios that... Actually, this one's Canadian. Ooh. Oh, no, this one is FCC, too. This is an older Kenwood. Now, I mentioned that because the way these work... The way these work is you select a channel, and it tops out at 16 to 20-something channels. These are channels that are locked in and set forward by the FCC. They're not supposed... Oh, gotta love these. Thank you. Stop it. Let me go back. There we go. These are supposed to be channelized radios, meaning you go up and down the channel until you find an empty one, and that's the channels you use. There's nothing more difficult about these. You can't set a frequency to transmit on. You must simply use what was required by the FCC to transmit on.
I know for
Period.
a fact them
That's
radio
how
waves
they
is
function.
harmful.
The problem with these in an emergency is they have relatively low power. They're not going to get you out very far. And if you happen to be in an area where lots of people have these, you could become overloaded pretty quickly. Now, one thing that these do that other radio services don't do is they have a scrambler function. This radio, it's the reason why I have it out here, will scramble your voice. So I'm going to hold this radio up to the microphone and I'm going to talk into this one. So that is a scrambler feature on an FRS radio. Totally garbage. I mean, it sounds like human voice, but it's pretty bad. So, yeah. These are cheap and plentiful, going from $15 up to $100 or more if you get like a gang of a couple of these. This guy runs off of AA. This guy has a lithium-ion battery pack, and this one has a completely internalized battery with USB-C charge. So the options are all over the place, and so you should consider when you go to buy FRS radios that you look around and find what you're looking for. I will pull up a website in a second because there are a couple of things we need to talk about finding radios like these, and it does help if you do a little due diligence in finding the ones that will fit your needs. Okay, so MERS. I don't have a MERS radio here, but some of you are going to be familiar with MERS. It's a multi-use radio system. MERS is kind of an odd duck. In the United States, MERS is a 5-channel. So we just went from like 16 to 20-something channels with FRS and GMRS to 5 channels. It is a max 2-watt output. So it's higher output than FRS radios. And there are businesses that use MERS. For instance, Walmart uses MERS radio. But there are a ton of companies that produce MERS. Oh, it says FRS radios at the bottom. That's a mistake. There are a bunch of companies that make MERS radios. ICOM, Japanese company, makes them. Motorola, Wouxun, Dakota, which is a company I just found out about recently after doing some research here. And then Gotenna. Gotenna is a dongle that connects to your phone via Bluetooth and will use MERS radio to communicate on. So I can't really mention too much about MERS because I don't have one. But that's a little background on it in case you wanted to check that out. Okay, CB. Civilian band. Everybody's familiar with civilian band. Those are my two CB radios. I have a Cobra and I have a Uniden Bearcat. I recommend the Uniden Bearcat. I put $2 signs there because the price is kind of subjective as you start moving around in different radio services. So keep that in mind. The Uniden Bearcat, though, is pretty full-featured. It's not AM-only amplitude modulation. It is also single sideband, which is incredibly useful if you're going to be on CB and have that capability to be able to switch between amplitude modulation and single sideband is very helpful. There are a world of CB radios, and I am not an expert in this space, but I am telling you that I do have the Bearcat, and I do like that radio. Citizens. Did I do that again? Yeah, it's Citizens. Why did I do civilian? I always do that. That's the second time I've done that on a slide. Thanks. So business radios and digital dongles. So here's my oddballs section. There are a multitude of business radios that run VHF, UHF, and 900 megahertz, which is even higher than UHF. And they can be useful, but the thing to keep in mind with them is that they have they're even more affected by your surroundings. So you're going to have even less range in some cases. But because they are kind of off the beaten path, they are digital, they are not digital. They are business class radios that operate in a space where a lot of people aren't on, channelized radios aren't on, then they're probably okay. The same companies are generally in this game as well. ICOM, Motorola, Kenwood, these are all Japan. Motorola is US, Chinese. Vertex Standard is a company that's been around for a while, and they are basically Yaesu. Midland is US, and then Gotenna Mesh. So I will show you this really quickly. So this is the Gotenna Mesh device. It is a Bluetooth dongle that connects to your phone. And what it does is it allows you to basically build a real mesh network of devices that are in your area. Is this connected? Oh, good. It's connected. So it will take your GPS information from your phone and allow you to send messages. So you can build chats of people that have these in a close proximity. I am guessing that this maybe has a mile capability. But the advantage of this guy is that you can leave him connected to a power source via its USB connection, and it will mesh with other devices like this that is in its space that it can hit. So using this, you can send... I did get one message to somebody. I think I was at Disneyland. When was this? 2019 when I last used this successfully. And I did have a node set up on my roof connected for a little while, another one of these guys, that allowed me to get out further because it was up high on your roof. Just a fun little device. I did a video review on that. If somebody would like to check that out, you can. All right, so now we're dipping into licensed radios. GMRS, Ground Mobile Radio Service. Think of it as FRS, but with more oomph. GMRS requires an FCC license in the United States today. Well, yeah, because it's the FCC. But specifically, GMRS is as defined is a United States service or North American service. And today, the license costs about $75. And it's good for 10 years. With the FCC $35 fee going into place, that will drop to $35. So if you're interested in GMRS and you don't want to pay the $35, I would recommend go get your amateur radio license while it doesn't cost anything. Wait for the fees to go into effect, and then get your GMRS license. A couple of the major players in this space are Midland, Motorola, as we've mentioned, and Wouxun. Now, there are a bunch of companies that offer not just handhelds, but handhelds in this case can go up to 5 watts max for a handheld, so similar to radios that are coming out for amateur radio. But the mobile radios can go up to 50 watts. So now you're talking about considerably more power, which is good. And I'm going to slide back over here because we're going to look at that website that I mentioned earlier. And I'm going to show you some examples. So I'm going to go to... I'm going to go to buytwowayradios.com. This is a really interesting web. Well, it's interesting in that it's pretty easy to get around, which can sometimes be a little iffy on amateur radio. Towmaster with the super chat just paid the fee, and it's $70. Oh yeah, for GMRS. Right on. Okay, so when you're on Buy Two-Way Radios, you just go to either business radios, as I mentioned, business radios in the past slides. You can go look through handheld radios, mobile radios, base stations. But if you go to consumer, if you go to FRS GMRS radios and you click there, you're going to get this big list of radios. DeWalt makes some. Midland, I already mentioned. Wouxun makes some. Again, Midland, Uniden, Motorola. The list goes on. There's a ton here, right? So if you have your GMRS license and you're on a website like this, and there's many that have a different way of navigating this, this is what I would recommend you do. If you go to the left-hand side here, you see how it says maximum power output? I would select 5 watts. Click that, and then that will show you the radios that are 5-watt output. You can do this on other websites too, but I'm just saying this is an example of how to do this on this specific website. And if you go down again and you go to a 50-watt output, because that's kind of where you want to be, or let's go to 40 first. The reason why you're considering a GMRS license is so you can get more power. More output power means you can transmit further, right? It's going to be a lot more helpful in an emergency, right? So you're considering we're still focusing on the emergency at hand, the problems at hand. If you're preparing for something, this is where you would go. And you could just search buytwowayradios.com, and that's their website. The Midland Micro Mobile GMRS 2-pack and the GMRS 2 and the Midland MXT400. Those are both MXT400s. But these guys, this is $250, right? So you're already kind of at ham radio prices. And again, this is a channelized radio. A channelized radio that is locked to those channels. You're not going to be able to do what you can do with amateur radio, for instance, right? Hopefully that makes sense. All right. Now we're getting to it. How long? 44 minutes in, and he's finally talking about ham radio. Amateur radio. So try not to just hit you with the fire hose because, again, this is kind of aimed for people that are approaching this new. I'm going to approach this in 4 ways. We're going to talk about HTs, or what we call handhelds. We're going to talk about mobile radios, which is kind of like what goes in a car or a truck and generally puts out 500 watts. We're going to talk about base stations that are generally high-frequency comms. You'll need at least your general license to play in this space, but with them, you can get country and worldwide communication, which is very effective. And then we're going to talk about portable and QRP. So that's a kind of amalgamation of all of the above. You can take these radios out, and they're designed to be in the field. I didn't go all the way through the HTs, but HTs can be really, really inexpensive in amateur radio or really expensive. And I will try and break this down with little Yelp-like dollar signs to show you which ones are very expensive, which ones are less expensive. All my recommendations are commercially available now and what I feel would be the best for emergency preparedness when I'm going to show you. If your favorite radio is not on the list, it's not because I don't like it. It's because I probably don't have enough experience with it. I've said it before. I will say it again right now. There are amazing amateur radios on the market. Most of the amateur radios that come out today are great. They are really, really good, and you'll have a blast with them. The only thing that will change is the accessibility or how you interface it. People have preferences there, and that's what you're kind of paying for in a lot of cases. Okay, so what HTs do I recommend? Again, that stands for handheld or handy-talkie, whatever you want to refer to it. I generally prefer, depending on a robust analog HT, meaning just traditional voice frequency modulated handhelds for an emergency situation. That would be my preferredness or my preference. And I prefer a good battery life and as wide-banded a receive as possible. And what I mean by that is it will transmit on 2 meters and 70 centimeters generally, but a lot of these radios will have a wider band receive capability. They will dip down into NOAA weather stations. They will dip down into aviation frequencies. They are much more effective in that case, so they can do double duty. So not only, or I hope you pick up an AM/FM wideband receiver, but consider also having a dual role radio that can also kind of step in cases for a little bit of redundancy. All right, so here's my list of the radios that I like that are handhelds. Yaesu, and I'm kind of going in order of what I like for multiple reasons that I'll break down. The FT4X is a radio I did a video on. It's a nice radio. It's got a great size. It's not too expensive, so I gave it the $1 sign because it's under $100. The FT60. I need to mention the FT60 because it is, what I understand, the radio that has flown off the shelves at Ham Radio Outlet. There are so many people buying this radio. I don't begrudge that. I think it's a good radio. However, it's getting a little old. It still uses, nickel metal hydride batteries, so it hasn't been upgraded into, people are making fun of my hair. It's dry. It's dry out here. It's hot and dry. What do you want? It still uses nickel metal hydride batteries. It hasn't made the jump to lithium ion, and I don't think that it ever will go into more newer battery types. Christiana sends a super chat. FT65 is a great radio too. So that's a question, right? I often get asked, which one do you prefer, the FT65 or the FT4X? They're basically the same radio. And for that reason, I would rather go with the more compact one at the same power output. So the FT4X is the one for me. And then, of course, the FT3DR. I think that is one of the best handhelds you can get. I definitely like the FT3. I think it has the most capabilities, the most features that you would want in an emergency, but it is also very expensive. So that's not something that everybody's going to swing for. I appreciate that. Now, let me throw it back over to the overhead because I do want to talk about some of these in person or in live and show you a little bit about what they look like here. So let me hop over. All right, so here we have kind of what I would consider the major three kind of best radios in this space for HTs. The Yaesu FT60 is the older radio, right, in the bunch. The advantage of this guy is that it's dual banded, it has a decent amount of memory channels, and it's also wide banded. The Wouxun, oddly enough, this radio feature-wise is almost identical to the Yaesu, but it has... Oh, did I put Baofeng is... Oh, hey, thank you for that. Yeah, no, Baofeng's not Japanese. I'll fix that in a second. This one has a better battery. This battery lasts forever on this radio. This is a really nice radio. In fact, I think in some ways this is kind of like the spiritual successor to the FT60, but that's probably going to ruffle some feathers. The FT3DR, though, does everything that these guys do, plus it's received down to HF frequencies, and it also has GPS for doing APRS. And APRS is the automatic packet reporting system. So you can literally send text messages to other hams with APRS. So those are what I like in this space. Those are probably my favorite ones. Let me talk about the Baofeng really quick. So this is the radio that nobody can buy right now on Amazon. There's nothing wrong with a Baofeng. We talked about this. Everybody's talked about this. But every one of these radios outclasses it for numerous reasons. Better hardware, even this older radio performs better than this one. This radio, you can put any antenna on it, and it won't overload the front end. This radio, if you give it too much RF gain on the receive side, it will not function correctly. So people ask me, what antenna do I put on this? Well, I really like the Signal Stuff signal stick. But because of the QA issues with this radio, there's a lot of people who go out and buy the Signal Stuff signal stick. They put it on this radio, and it loses reception. It loses receive capability. It doesn't gain from it. So, yes, it's cheap. No, these aren't available right now if somebody's going to go out and immediately buy something. All of these, though, are available. Maybe not this one. Maybe not this one. And they're arguably better. This guy, I believe, is $120 or $140, which is cheaper than this guy. And this is a good radio. So that's what I would say on that. Hopefully that makes sense. Yeah. Yeah, the Baofeng, it's crazy that you go on Amazon and the Baofengs are sold out until February. Next month, end of next month. Can't even get a Baofeng. Baofengs used to be falling out of the sky. I got to go in here and make that edit. So thank you for pointing out China. You do these slides fast and furious, and you always forget something. It never fails. Handhelds have roughly a range of 1 to 40 miles, and I appreciate that if you put a better antenna on an HT, there are situations where it will get out. I understand that. But I'm given the general reliable communications range. Nick Smith with the super chat. Ask Leia to turn that fang on.
I know for a fact them radio waves is harmful.
All right. You know, the other advantage of the couple advantages of the Yaesu and the Wushan, really easy to use. And I'd give points to the Baofeng too. It's generally not that difficult. I almost got a mosquito. It's generally not that difficult to use, but the Wushan and the Yaesu are FT60 are very easy to use. All right, so mobile radios. Now we mentioned briefly, so mobile radios are the radios you put in your car. Or you could use them at home. There's nothing wrong with that. You just run the coax outside, run it to a power supply. In fact, that MFJ 4230DMP is the power supply that I use for a lot of my radios. My primary radio in front of me, I still use that. These radios are 50-watt output, so you will have to have a secondary antenna put on them. But you're going to get a lot of bang for your buck, if you will, as far as your output capability and your general preferred use case of having an antenna outside. Getting an antenna outside, getting it up on your roof, getting it on the top of your car is going to do much better than an HT in almost all cases. All right, so a couple of standouts in that space from kind of top down, and I'll give you my thoughts on why. My primary radio in my shack is that ICOM 2730. It's sitting right below my 7300. In fact, I can show you that right now. There it is. There literally, how's it going? There's my hand. My 2730 is right there. It is a really easy to use analog radio. It is, I gave it the $2 signs because it's not as expensive as the other ones we're going to talk about, and it works just fine. But it is analog only. It doesn't have a lot of frills to it. It does crossband repeat. Crossband repeat is where you transmit in on VHF and it transmits out on UHF, or vice versa. You use that when you're trying to reach a repeater that's far away from you. So keep that in mind. ICOM 2730A, good. ID 5100 is good. I gave it the $3 sign. The only thing it doesn't do is APRS. The Yaesu FTM 300 gave it $3 signs, but it's bordering on $4. I think that's $400 radio. That one does APRS. The FTM 400 is the radio I have in my car. That is $400. Or sorry, almost $500. So I gave that the $4 sign. I have that radio in my car. You can see it on the right-hand side. You can see it set up listening to 2-meter simplex. If you can see that, it's kind of small. And it's always on APRS. So I'm always usually operating APRS. And again, that is radio-to-radio text messaging that you can do within amateur radio. It's a fantastic aspect of radio, although generally to get the most out of it, you need to have a mobile radio, 50-watt output, with a nice antenna behind it. I'd give it a nice quarter-wave vertical antenna, something you'd use on a car. You can use that at home too. You can put it on a mag mount, slap it on top of a filing cabinet, or you can buy a purpose-built antenna for putting on the side of your house. And they start little, maybe $50, $60, and are about 5 feet, and then they can go up from there and be a little bit bigger. Higher you get it up in the air, the better it's going to perform. I really, really like the DR135 by Alinco. That is the radio I use on my packet station. My packet station is for similar to APRS, but more of an old school version of it. I run what's called a bulletin board system, which is a kind of think of old school email over ham radio for local comms. I did a video on that, a live stream, so if you're interested, type in packet radio or ham radio packet radio, and you'll likely find me. And then the Kenwood TM71A. I'll just mention this here because I don't think I mentioned Kenwood yet. I am concerned that Kenwood might be getting out of the ham radio business. That is just me looking at a crystal ball here. I just have a feeling that that's happening, but I don't know. That's an unsubstantiated myth, but still. All right, so I'll leave it at that. The advantages of mobile radios is that you can go real close and you can go all the way to line of sight, or basically the end of the usable range of that radio. So really, really good for having in the shack or in your car. Okay, so base stations, and the FT891 is kind of borderline, not really a base station. That's that top radio you see there. So when we're talking about base stations, I'm generally referring to HF radios because that's primarily what is on the market. And HF radios are, again, radios that operate in the high-frequency space of amateur radio and can do communication beyond line of sight. And that's facilitated by the RF hitting the ionosphere and bouncing back down to go around the globe, if you will. HF radio is what gets that done. Let me show you my radio again here. Let's see if I can get you a signal here. So these waterfall features here are all people talking that are not local to me. Because there is an event going on. There it is. So there's somebody. These are all people that are not local to me. They're probably on the other side of the country, most likely. 40 was doing great this evening, but then it died. What happened? There we go. That's a spur. There's somebody. Anyway, you get the idea. So the signal you're seeing, that's kind of that vertical line going down, those are people that are not local to me, and that's facilitated by bigger antennas, bigger radios. In this case, this is a base station radio. That is an ICOM IC7300. So the radios that I would recommend in this space, and again, we're talking about emergency preparedness, and I'm aiming for the lower end of the price range. Hey, good game, ham radio. Thank you. I think you're right about the Kenwood. I think the AKM fire pushed them over the edge. I think you're right. And it was your video, among some other things I heard, that kind of made me feel that. Because, in fact, I might have skipped it. I think I did. I got to go back. Yeah, the Kenwood D72 and the D74 are very good handhelds, but they're both discontinued now. And the D74 isn't that old. If you're a ham radio collector and you're wondering what ham radio will be worth money in the future, grabbing yourself a D74 is probably a good idea and putting it away. Are you a ham radio collector? I don't know, but that would be my hot tip. So I'm going to go down this list. I feel that the ICOM IC7100 is probably top tier for emergency preparedness. I'd actually put the FT891 up there, and that should be. See, you got me doing it again. No, I did it right. No, never mind. I screwed myself up. Never edit live. The 7100, I put the little asterisk there because it is a VHF, UHF, and HF radio. So it is a shack in the box. It is an emergency preparedness radio in the sense that it can do kind of all the things. And it's got a cute little display that goes on your desk, and you can hide the box somewhere else. So you can put it in your car. You can run it from home. Doesn't matter. I personally like the 7300. That is my favorite HF radio. It's the one I own. It's the one I just showed you. In fact, all these are my pictures, but still. And I put the 9700 there just because it's relatively the same price as the 7300, and it's the only way you're going to get VHF, UHF in that space. Throwing it over to Yaesu, the 891 that's my 891 there with the rails on the side. And the 991A also is a VHF, UHF radio with HF capability. So, again, shack in the box, it will allow you to do a ton of different stuff with it. So those are the kind of the ones I recommend people look at. These are not cheap radios. Off the top of my head, the 7100 is $700. The 891 is about $600 to $700. The 7300 goes for about $1,000. 9700 is up further than that, $1,400, I think. 891, the FT 891, I mentioned that. The 991A is $1,200, and the FT DX10 is $1,400 to $1,500 or $1,600. All right, so portable radios. You're going to see a couple of radios that were on the last slide. There's a reason for that. Portable radios are designed for use outdoors, not our doors, or in ad hoc situations. QRP is a niche radio during an emergency, but should be considered for individuals. Some of these radios are repeated from the slide before. QRP is a radio that is 10 watts or lower output. All the radios from the previous slide are 100 watt output radios. Top of my list, the ICOM 7100 is a portable radio. The ICOM 705, but that is not a cheap radio. That's $1,200, and it's QRP. The Yaesu FT891 is a fantastic portable radio. It's kind of designed, again, go back a slide. It's kind of designed to be portable. It has the kickstand there for you. You can put rails on the side of it. The rails are extra. Great radio. Really, really nice radio. I really, really like that radio. It's in my car right now. It lives there permanently in my car, and you can have the head unit come off, and you can use it that way. Oh, QRP radios, though. Continuing. The Xiegu G90, which is Chinese, is the cheapest HF radio that I really recommend. It is $400, and it does a lot. It's got a screen, it's got an antenna analyzer, it's got an antenna tuner, all built in. It doesn't have any other frills other than that. It has very little filtering. It doesn't do a ton, but for $450, it's not bad. Let's see. The Bullfrog 89 mentions no Elecraft mention as QRP. Again, we're going with the preparedness aspect of this. And there are a couple things that the Elecraft is not the highest that I would put on my list. In fact, the 705 barely made it in. I would rather have a 7100 or an 891 in a purely emergency situation. So keep that in mind. Again, we're highly structuring this around a specific emergency, right? Or the emergency I gave, or emergency response, getting prepared for radio comms, that kind of thing. The Xiegu X5105, also very similar to the G90. It has a tuner, has an analyzer. It is cheap-ish. It's about $500, but it starts getting into the territory of just getting a 7100 or an 891, and you get 100 watts output versus 5 watts output. So in a lot of ways, you should look at the 7100 or the 891 because they're not that much more expensive and you get a lot more radio. Lastly, I will mention the Yaesu 817 and the 818. The reason why I mention that is it's QRP, but it is all band, all mode. So it does, in fact, I forgot my asterisks. It'll do VHF, UHF, and HF, which makes it a really good radio for lots of situations. It is kind of a Swiss Army radio, which is exactly why the 705 is on this list too, is because it does so many things. It goes even beyond radio use in some cases. You could use the 705 for like figuring out where your location is because it has GPS built in, which some of the other radios do, but none on this list. None of these portable radios have GPS capability. So consider that. All right. So, wow, I went over time. I didn't expect that. I thought I was going to blow right through these, but man. I'm going to look at the chat for a little while, but I want to go to the Discord and have a discussion there. It's crazy how many people watched. I think we had close to 1,300 people peak today. Man, you guys are awesome. Thanks. Thanks for coming out here. I hope I helped. I hope I gave people some context. Again, this is for people that are concerned that they don't have what they need. So I hope that I gave you some pointers to go to. And remember, a lot of this in an emergency is going to be trying to figure out what's going on. Just capturing the moment of we don't have power, we don't have internet. What's happening? If you want to know more of my thoughts on that, the podcast that my wife and I put out this week, I think it's like No Power, No Internet, No Cell Phone, What Now? That was the title of the podcast. I talked through this hypothetical scenario. So hopefully that helps give some more context. So with these two things combined, you can go spend some money on some radios. Okay, so Chasing Dawn says, is the G90 worth it or is the 7100 better? So the 7100 is better. It is a better radio. It's a 100-watt radio, fantastic radio. The G90, though, does something that those radios don't have. It has a tuner. It has an analyzer built in.
I know for a fact them radio waves is harmful.
It's tough. It really is tough because you're kind of splitting hairs. So if you tag me, it makes it easier. Philip Muth says, oh, you had a live stream? I've been busy trying to keep up with the chat. Yeah, I saw that. It's been fast and furious. I checked in a net past week. They talked about what happens to your ham license during martial law. Have you talked about that? Oh, yeah, interesting. That you can't transmit, huh? In some cases. Yeah, because that's we've got a lot of law abiders in the house these days. I don't mean all of you. I'm saying just people in general. Back in World War II, they restricted access to the ham bands. Like, they actually said you can't transmit. Can you imagine that going over today? Even CB, any radio service. Can you imagine people not using their radio? Fat chance. Fat chance. The Bullfrog89 asks, will the Discord be streamed this week? So I got myself into a bit of trouble. I left YouTube on when I went live in the after chat. I normally only do Twitch when I do the live stream. So I'm only going to do Twitch this week. So the link is in the description, I think, for my Twitch. If not, join us over in the Discord, and we'll give you the link to Twitch that way. I will be live on Twitch. I want to make sure I don't miss some of the questions. Lay of the Land, that's right, for those of you. Adam C., the link should be in the description, but if you search Ham Radio Crash Course wherever you podcast, you'll find it. Or just search Ham Radio Crash Course Podcast. There's another mosquito. QRP radios are only limited in transmit power. They receive as well as any other. Yes, Dindo Nuffin. Yeah, Dindo. I got it. QRP radios are only limited in transmit power. They receive as well as any other ? That was a lot of a statement more than a question, but yes, generally. In fact, some QRP radios, and so I'll give the nod. I'll give the nod to Elecraft. The Elecraft KX3 is a top class receiver, one of the best receivers in amateur radio. The Sherwood Report, which is a report that ranks amateur radios 1 to N on their list, has the Elecraft KX3 as one of their top radios. And I have an Elecraft KX2. I really like it. I don't know that I would call it an emergency radio, though, or what I would want to pull out in an emergency. No offense to ICOM. I'm sorry. No offense to Elecraft. I just mentioned ICOM a lot, I guess. It's got it on my brain. The Lab 59 Discovery. Yeah, I had such a limited time with the Lab 599 that I don't really want to dive in on that one completely. But I did like it. I think it's a good radio. I'm kind of a little... I'm not a big supporter of a QRP radio as an emergency radio. I think you want the extra power, because you can always dial it back. In fact, you should dial it back. You keep it low just to make the contact you need, and you keep bumping it up until you get your message out. Matt Quinn's KX line is a little fragile. Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking. In fact, I dinged up my KX2 kind of bad. All right, Mike Sigler, thank you for that comment there. Thank you for the thumbs up. Can ham radio be programmed without a license? Yes, you can. Oh, good question. So for all of you that don't have your license yet, or you're contemplating getting your license, you can listen to all the frequencies you want. You can buy any of these radios and you can listen to whatever you want. The problem of legality comes in when you transmit. So as long as you don't transmit, you're fine. Bob Oxton, do you recommend an extra battery for HTs? I do. Didn't talk about it today, but I've talked about it in other videos. I recommend an extra battery and a drop-in charger. You leave the extra battery in the drop-in charger. Charge it. Use the radio. Battery dies. Come home, whatever. Take the battery off the radio. Swap the battery in the desktop charger. Put the new battery in your radio. Go about your business. And so then you're just swapping them out back and forth. Forget Your Life says, tell these people the FT3 doesn't have single sideband. It does not have single sideband. It is AM only in the shortwave. I think it'll do FM too. Does not do single sideband. I wish it did. That would be perfect. I love my Yaesu 100D, 100 watts, all band, all mode, medium wave, all the way through 800 megahertz. Yeah, Bullfrog, that's a good radio. Yeah, nothing against that. I will throw this out there. In fact, I guess we're not done yet, so I'm gonna look. I'll keep watching the chat, but I did get literally as I was getting ready for this, somebody was talking about used radios. And they were talking about where to find used radios. So here's eBay. eBay is a great place to find used radios. Look at the prices for this 7300. $820. That's not that bad. $1,100. That's more expensive than it is to buy it new. $860. $1,299. Very expensive. Doesn't make sense. $1,400. Right? So used radio prices sometimes are crazy.
I know for a fact that
I will mention, though,
harmful.
Hammond Hi-Fi is a eBay account that buys consignment radios and resells them. And they specialize in ham radio equipment, vacuum tubes, all kinds of stuff. I'm not affiliated with any of these people. I just really like this company. I've bought some stuff through them. I have to mention the QRZ forums because they do have a good swap meet. It's a web forum for people selling things. In fact, hey, look at this. LNR LD5. This was my first HF QRP radio. This person is selling this. Where's the price? PayPal? Oh, $450. I think I paid $450 for mine. I think I paid $450. So, used radios, not that cheap in a lot of cases. And I'll round it out by mentioning Ham Radio Outlet also has used radios. You can get used radios, opened items, consignment, discontinued. Oh, discontinued. Is the D74 in here now? Yeah, so you can go down this list. The problem with this is that there's no pictures, so you're going to have to call. That's a $600 $891 that's used? Okay. All right, let's look in the chat again. Scott Gallagher says, got a great deal on the 7300. $900 is not bad if that's brand new, for sure. Can you Rob asks, can you recommend a battery monitor with low voltage disconnects for a 100 amp hour SLA battery? Can't you just use these guys? Hold on, let me go to the overhead. This guy. One of those inline jobbers. I should be able to handle it, right? Bill, he makes a statement, not a question. That's a good point. He said, you can encrypt radio if you have a business and a business license. Correct, you can. FCC business license. All righty. I would welcome everybody join us on the Discord. I hope this was helpful for some of you. I appreciate that from some of you veterans, you ham radio experts in the house. This might have been a little redundant. I appreciate that, but if you watched, I thank you very much. I do thank you for that. Okay. I'm going to say big thank you to the wonderful patrons that support this channel. Thank you for your support. A lot of what I do is really capable because of your patronage. So thanks for that. My wife has pinged me. Talk about how hams with too many HTs could look at selling. Oh, good. I don't have the link, and I apologize. I will update the links in the comments or in the description. My wife is mentioning that there's a lot of people out there who are possibly looking for a Baofeng or possibly looking for another HT. If you yourself have HTs at home that need a home that you're not really using and you want to sell, consider looking up the Ham Radio Crash Course Buy, Sell, Trade group
I know for
on
a fact them
Facebook.
radio waves is harmful.
We have a nice group for selling gear that you have, getting rid of it, whatever you want to do. Consider joining us over there and getting rid of your HTs to people who need it, that want maybe a little extra layer of preparedness in their lives. So if you've got some Baofangs lying around, you want to get rid of them, there's a place to go. And again, thank you to all the patrons. I appreciate the support. Again, you are what allow me to do what I do, so thank you for that. Ethan has posted the link in the description or in the comments for the Discord, and the link is in the description as well if you'd like to take that. David Starr with the super chat. I need to buy a transceiver with only used components that I can pay cash for. Okay. Go to a pawn shop and buy stuff to build a radio. That's not very specific. Oh, hey, Ray Novak's in the house. What's up, Ray? You've been traveling, man. I hope you made it to... I think you made it. I saw a picture. Right on. Okay, I think we made it to the end here. There we go. And to the brew crew, I didn't finish my Twisted Tea. By the way, Twisted Tea, 5% alcohol. It's pretty light. I don't really feel buzzed or anything in comparison to what we normally drink out here. All right. So, yeah, consider joining us over at the Buy Sell Trade. I would appreciate it. I'm going to head over to the Discord here shortly. Thanks so much for watching. This is the Ham Radio Crash Course. I am Josh, KI6NAZ. If you like this, give me a thumbs up. Consider subscribing. Good luck on your radio preps. You can reach me on the Facebook group. You can send me an email, which is attached to this account on YouTube. I'm on Instagram. You can find me under Ham Radio Crash Course or Hosh Nasi. And until I talk to you again, 73. See ya.